Now welcome to another lightning response video. This time I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to take some questions from my Discord server, and no, it doesn't mean you have to sign up for my Discord or my Patreon to get access to my Discord to get future questions answered. I'm doing this because I get a lot of questions, good questions on there that I think deserve to be in a video. Anyway, the first one comes to us from Deathmark, who asked, "Hey Thor, I was listening to an Andor review today, and at some point in the review they brought up that the prevalence of Jedi in the galaxy who are alive and active during the events of the original trilogy strains credibility and lessens the stakes of the original trilogy and stuff like that. I would love to get your opinion on the subject. I'd love a video about it. If you've already done such, please point me to it, but I would love a video if you haven't done one already about how many Jedi do you think should have survived the Purge, and how many should have then gone on to survive up and through the events of the original trilogy without having something happen to them, like Ezra, for example, to take them off the board." And honestly, I don't have too much of a problem with quite a few Jedi surviving initially, or surviving Order 66. I mean, we've heard 10,000 Jedi alive in the prequel era, or at the start of the Clone Wars, I really should say. And then, sure, quite a few of them do indeed die during the Clone Wars. But even if half of them have died, and I don't even know if that's accurate or if that's way too many, way too few, but even if half of them have died, even if there are like 5,000 Jedi alive when Order 66 is given, there's a really good chance a lot of them are surviving that. Not every single Jedi, the moment the order is given, is going to be around clone troopers. Some aren't even really participating in the Clone Wars, or aren't actively participating in that moment. They might be on leave of some kind, they might be tending to some other duties. Basically what I'm saying is there's a good chance hundreds of Jedi, if not 1,000 Jedi, could have, in theory, survived Order 66. Now, it's not really presented that way. Revenge of the Sith makes it feel like a good chunk of them are getting killed, so let's say even dozens of them survive. I don't really have a problem with that, or 100 of them. I think that makes sense. In fact, I don't think it makes sense that all of them, or most of them, all but like Kenobi and Yoda and a couple others would have survived. I think it makes sense that a lot of them kind of survived and then kind of got picked off maybe in the next couple days. You would have some that didn't know what happened and then wander into a group of clones and get shot. You would have others who would be picked off some other way or would return to the temple as the beacon was telling them to do, and they would get killed that way. So in other words, I think relatively a lot survived the initial Order 66, probably quite a few get killed over the next few days, and then, again, maybe dozens survive after that and will be killed somewhere along the way. I mean, we do have Obi-Wan saying all the way back in A New Hope that Vader helped hunt down and destroy the Jedi. So in order for him to do that, we need Jedi to have survived. And I think one of the problems with Jedi surviving is actually not that they survived, but that we keep getting stories about them. I mean, it was cool. We got Kanan in Rebels. We got Cal Kestis in the Jedi series. That's fine. I'm glad we got a couple stories like that. They're good. I like both those stories. But then we're getting more and more stories about Jedi surviving. I mean, just recently we got Tales of the Underworld, where yet another Jedi Padawan survives and is taken under the wing of Asajj Ventress, it seems. And it's like, did we need that story? Isn't this getting old already? Isn't the story of a Jedi surviving the Purge getting old already? Again, I don't think the problem is so much that some and maybe a great many survived. I think the problem is we just keep hearing about them. Now, as for making it all the way up to the original trilogy and through it and surviving beyond it, that I have a little more of an issue with, not as much as some people do. I mean, we do have Yoda's line in Return of the Jedi that the last of the Jedi you will be to Luke, but honestly, I think that's just Yoda saying exactly what Luke needs to hear in that moment. He's telling him, you are the only hope, not so much that he is literally telling him, you are the last Jedi, you're just the last Jedi that has any chance against Palpatine. I mean, I don't think the kid that Asajj Ventress saved is going to eventually grow up to beat Palpatine. Yoda himself could not beat Palpatine. So no matter what other Jedi might be out there, even with Ahsoka out there doing who knows what during the original trilogy time period, she's not beating Palpatine. None of them are going to be able to go and stand up to Palpatine and win. It is just Luke, and, well, Luke even can't beat Palpatine if you ask me. Not at this point in time. Maybe down the road he'll become powerful enough. But I don't think if Luke goes into the second Death Star looking for a fight, which he's not supposed to do, but if he goes in there trying to kill Vader and Palpatine, he's either being killed by them or he is turning to the dark side. So even Luke didn't have a chance. He just so happened to be able to turn his father back to the light, who could defeat Palpatine by kind of catching him off guard. Even Vader probably loses in a straight-up fight to Palpatine. I think the lightning does him in. I don't think he has a chance against that. So yeah, my take on this is the stories about Jedi surviving are getting old. The fact that some survive, I don't think that's a problem. Of course, some would have survived Order 66, probably more than we would even think. And most of them are going to be hunted down and killed by the Inquisitors and Vader himself. And sure, a few may survive into the original trilogy. We do know some of them. But they're not saving the Jedi Order and defeating Palpatine, or saving the galaxy and defeating Palpatine, however you want to look at it. They're just there, and Luke is the true only hope that the light side or the Jedi have at that point. Alright, and the next question comes to us from Ducksith, who asked, "Hey Thor, thinking about Attack of the Clones a bit recently, and I do not think the Clone Wars were supposed to start as early as they did. I think Palpatine made the best of an unraveling situation, but there is no way he could plan for Jango leading the Jedi to Kamino and then Geonosis. I would love to hear your thoughts on this idea, which in my mind has two parts. 1, what was the original plan? 2, how might the war and destruction of the Jedi gone differently if the original plan had succeeded, had Dooku and Jango not messed up royally? Ignore the EU that was written after to explain things, only use what is stated in or can be inferred from the movies." Okay, this is going to be a difficult one to do on the fly here without having something written up, but I will agree with you that that was not the plan. I once thought that, sure, Palpatine is that damn brilliant, that his machinations are so precise, that he had it all the way down to Jango leading Kenobi and then so on and so forth. But quite honestly, that feels like a lot to go right, even if, yes, we've heard in Return of the Jedi that everything is proceeding as I have foreseen, said by Palpatine, and that's probably why I've always assumed his crazy plans usually go right. But in this case, no, I don't think the plan was to have Kenobi follow Jango to Kamino and then to Geonosis and all of that. I don't think Palpatine could have foreseen that. I agree, he kind of made the best of a bad situation or an unraveling situation. And that's what I think one of his skills really is. He's a good manipulator. He's good at making do with what he has. And it all obviously worked out and the Clone Wars began. And in the long run, yes, things worked out exactly as he had wanted them to, with the Jedi being destroyed and him becoming Emperor. As for what the original plan was, well, probably the assassination of Padme. I mean, I'm kind of torn between that being some sort of actual plan that he wants to succeed, that if Padme is killed, the dominoes fall and the war begins between the Separatists and the Republic. Yet there's another part of me that wants Padme to be in trouble simply because that is a way to get Anakin involved with Padme. I mean, let's not forget that Palpatine is the one that suggests that Obi-Wan and Anakin protect Padme. That was all his idea, and I do think that was part of the plan. I do think he wants Anakin to start to fall for her, and then something happens, and she's assassinated, Anakin feels guilt, and then Palpatine uses that guilt to manipulate Anakin to eventually turn him to the dark side. I think that is kind of the plan. The grand plan to both start the Clone Wars and turn Anakin at the same time. I mean, that just seems to be the only thing that makes sense, or that we can infer from the movies if we are just taking the movies. And I mean, we can look at how prepared the clone army already was, that they were ready to start the war. So I don't think the plan was to down the road another 5 to 10 years get the war started. I think it was to get it started in Attack of the Clones. Again, the army, the ships, everything was ready to go, which should have been like a big red flag to the Jedi and the Republic. I know they had no other choice but to use them. But even still, they should have been like, damn, this is really convenient. We need to look into this as much as possible. And so I do think, again, Padme is supposed to be the start of the war somehow. I think she is supposed to survive the initial assassination attempt, the one that we see at the very beginning of the Attack of the Clones. I even think there's a really good chance that Palpatine himself is the one that tipped her off, because if you remember at the start there, we had Captain Typho talking about, oh, there was no threat after all, because I think they had, again, gotten some sort of information. It may not have come directly from Palpatine, it may have been indirectly from him because he didn't want to know he was the source. But he probably tipped them off somehow so that the assassination attempt, the first one, would fail. She then comes to him and he's like, hey, I got an idea. Why don't we have 2 Jedi protect you? Why not, who could we get? How about Obi-Wan and Anakin? And then, of course, at some point while Anakin is protecting her, after he falls in love with her, because I'm sure he has told Palpatine at some point he still cares about her or still thinks about her. He obviously knew the two had some feelings for each other, or he had feelings for her at this point. And then maybe the second or third attempt finally succeeds. Padme is killed. Anakin is angry. He blames himself. He blames himself for probably the death of his mother, which is upcoming in this film as well. All of this is used by Palpatine to turn him eventually after the Clone Wars have begun and ended the way he wants them to end. Alright, well I think that is going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about these questions. Do you think too many Jedi survived Order 66, or does it make sense that so many survived and would be picked off along the way until only a handful survived into the original trilogy, or is even a handful too many? Also, how do you think Palpatine intended to start the war? What was the plan? You can also then leave a question for a future lightning response video. Just start your comment off with "Hey Thor," ask your question. I'll try to answer it in a future video. But whatever you decide to do, leave some comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.